Hello, Akira here, and welcome back to the channel. May I present the next new awful way to play Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones. FE8, but all of my units have 0 speed. This is modelled after X-Emblem's 0 strength playthrough, which proved to be possible. This time everyone has 0 speed base and 0 speed personal growth. And it's an Ironman, where chat will be voting on which route we go on because it's funnier that way. I think. I actually think they might be worse than 0 strength, since the lack of speed affects both the offense and defense of my units. So, join me in this wacky ride where Seth no longer one-round KOs over 50% of the game at base. In my first attempt to stream this 0 speed FE8 run, YouTube gets too excited and decides to mirror the units in my edited ROM and have 0 speed. Fortunately, this issue is solved for the next attempt, where I'm able to start a difficult mode run without my game video lagging horrifically behind the audio. In the prologue, we are joined by Eirika, who has 0 speed, and Seth, who has 0 speed. Eirika is even more useless than usual, as now in addition to lacking attack and bulk like in vanilla, she now lacks her avoid and has even worse bulk due to getting doubled for huge damage. Meanwhile, Seth no longer doubles, and therefore cannot one-round most enemies, but is still obviously amazing in this context, as the unit with 11 base defense and 8 base res is invaluable for the tanking we will have to do. The tanking, in fact, that starts right on this first map, with the second fighter, who has 4 speed. This means that he doubles both Seth and Eirika, potentially one-round KOing the latter from full with not awful hit rate, due to my units having no avoid. As a result, Eirika is not allowed to do anything on this map, and Seth routs the enemies himself in a pretty standard 2-turn. Later clears will take far longer. Come Chapter 1, all of the fighters have 4 or more speed, doubling everyone and thus making them the nemesis of this army. Still, because Seth is now better at the Jagan job of setting up kills for other units, Eirika is able to obtain some experience by getting the kill on the first fighter on enemy phase counter. After this first turn, we are joined by Franz, who has 0 speed, and Gilliam, who has 0 speed. In this context, I have no clue how I'm meant to get Franz levels, as he's usually the squishiest of the calves. Gilliam, however, has his stonks rise dramatically in this run, as his speed is pretty bad, if we're being kind, in vanilla FE8, and tanking is now actually a valued role. It has been a long time though since I've had Eirika get injured within the first turn of this map, and therefore I move her onto the fort before routing the non-boss enemies on this map present from the beginning. This ends tragically, as it means that I inadvertently trigger the reinforcement zone too early, and get my units pincered by multiple fighters that cannot be one-hit KO'd by Seth. Thus Eirika is attacked by a fighter while on the fort, and dies after getting hit by 2 41s, bringing a very embarrassing end to the first attempt proper of this 0 speed run. Clearly, more degenerate strategies will have to be used in the future. In attempt 2 of this 0 speed FE8 Ironman, the prologue goes nearly exactly the same, with Seth killing everything while Eirika stands back. This time, however, I do not game over in Chapter 1, as I decide to wait until the enemies on the map from the beginning are mostly routed before I trigger the reinforcements, who I feed to Gilliam. This strange set of priorities means that Gilliam ends up getting 2 full levels on this map, which is more experience than I've ever gotten him by this point in the game. Killing the boss, Brigitte, takes a while, since 0 speed Seth obviously cannot double him, and sees me use up a full use of a vulnerary. Even after this though, I decide to spam end turn to build the Seth Eirika support, since this is an Ironman, and the light anima full attack defense support will benefit them both greatly. Well, mostly, entirely, Seth. Since I decide to build up towards the B support threshold, we end this map on a very nice number of turns. After completing the map, we get given our regularly scheduled 5,000 gold, and now have 2 new units, Mulder and Vanessa. Mulder is, unfortunately, not the bolder, as it turns out that his relative bulk as a healer comes from his speed. Without it, he has only 20 HP and 2 defense, and thus gets completely and utterly demolished by most enemies. Still, given that everyone gets doubled and they are largely incapable of one-hit KOing enemies, the ability to heal is greatly appreciated for any semblance of action economy. Vanessa, while probably also instantly dead, should she be exposed to an enemy, also remains a very useful unit. Flying rescue drop is huge, which we're able to put into practice immediately in Chapter 2, the Protected, both with the standard Ross save and then ferrying people around to get away from the brigands after Garcia finishes off the Archer. As the only units with any trace of sturdiness, only Gilliam and Seth see any combat. Green Ross is, however, overly zealous to join combat due to his AI-induced recklessness, so Vanessa has to keep him firmly away from the action. Still, everything is fine, and we are able to get the pure water from the village, which promises to be a very useful item in the future. Since both Ross and Garcia survive the map, they join at the end of the chapter. Ross and Garcia obviously both have 0 speed, and I suspect are on the winning side in this altered ROM, as they both have middling to bad speed on average, so I immediately commit to using Garcia. Sadly, Ross being able to promote twice does not, in fact, mean that he will be able to get any more speed than most of my other units, as he can get a maximum of 2 speed by going either Berserker or Hero, with 1 point of speed gained for going through Pirate for Warrior. The start of Chapter 3, The Bandits of Borgo, sees the introduction of walls, which means that I can take this map incredibly slowly and focus my experience channels to the best targets, who I think are Gilliam and Garcia. It also sees the join of Nami, who has 0 speed. Despite being a very bad unit in vanilla, due to being originally locked to 2 range with bad bases and now having even worse bases, she is actually more valuable here, since being able to deal damage without eating a counter is very good. Unfortunately, I very much doubt that we will be able to get the Orion's Bolt, so she is likely to be a temporary unit. 1 turn later, we recruit Kolb, who has 0 speed. Unlike his girlfriend, he is hit far harder by the speed shortage, as in order to steal off of an enemy, you need to have equal or higher speed than them. There is a grand total of two enemies that he is capable of stealing from. Those being Amelia and Marissa, who as recruitable units, have 0 speed as enemies. At the very least, this does mean that if chat ends up voting to go Eirika route, because of how badly Eirika sucks, it is theoretically possible that we could get 4 speed from stealing Amelia's Speedwing in Chapter 9a, Distant Blade. Overall, the presence of walls makes this a very relaxed stroll towards the boss, as we can freely choose what battles we fight, without drawing aggro from additional enemies. When we do reach Basba, chat alerts me to the fact that Basba is the perfect victim against whom to train up both Nami and Ross. This is something that probably at least a few of the viewers regret, because the process of training Ross to Journeyman 10 and Nami to level 3 takes around 25 minutes of real life time, during which we torture Basba. It also results in the usage of more than half of the hatchet's durability, and involves Basba breaking his hand axe on Seth's face. Unsurprisingly, this gives me a lot of turns during which to build supports. On this map I get all of Nami Colm C, Mulder Gilliam C, Ross Garcia C, and Seth Eirika B. The 69 turns spent on Chapter 1 is more than twice eclipsed by the number of turns spent on this map at 150. At the start of Chapter 4, Ancient Horrors, I promote Ross into a pirate, the reasoning being that the 1 speed from promotion may prevent him from getting dulled by a select few enemies. I am correct, as it stops him from getting dulled by exactly 1 Bone Walker, so we are already getting value. Our new recruit is Arthur, who has 0 speed, and who has bad stats in this context in all of attack, thanks, light magic, bulk, and also luck. The fact that we cannot double anyone means that Slayer may actually be an impactful skill for killing things on player phase, but I have no idea how I meant to get him enough experience to promote unless I grind him in the Tower of Volney later on. Loot I decide we will simply pick up at the end of the map, since despite what Arthur says, none of the villages on this map are in any danger. What is, however, a slight danger is the movement of the Moguls, who deal magical damage to everyone's pretty abysmal res, and also the arrival of the reinforcements from the right hand side at the beginning of turn 2. This ultimately ends up being fine though, and after routing the top half of the map, we huddle to the right after triggering the reinforcement zone. And once again, we give the boss kill to Seth, as is preordained. After the end of Chapter 4 in this 0 speed FE8 run, we get Lute, who has 0 speed. Probably she is still worse here than Alter is due to her ability to acquire Slayer as a player phase killing tool, but still, a singular strong attack that hits on res is plenty valuable enough. Now we head into Chapter 5, the Empire's Reach, where we get Natasha, who has 0 speed. Of course, she is worse than Mulder, having less magic and staff rank, Mind, in this setting where we're far worse both offensively and defensively, having 2 healers is very handy, and I mean, nothing could ever happen to Mulder, surely. Upon starting the map proper, we get our first look at a recruitable unit that starts off red in the form of Joshua. We know that he's a recruitable unit because he has 0 speed. As a usually speedy unit, he suffers greatly from the speed shortage. Still, I decide to recruit him for the extra body and killing edge in his inventory, as crits are likely to be our only way of getting rid of enemies that we don't have effective damage against in one round of combat. Throughout the course of this map, Vanessa does flyer things and collects the items from most of the villagers with careful positioning. This means that at the end of the map, we get the guiding ring, which... I haven't exactly been getting much experience on any of the magical units other than Mulder, but I'm sure it will come in handy eventually. The completion of Chapter 5 brings us straight to Chapter 5X, Unbroken Heart, with Ephraim's party. Here we have Ephraim, who has 0 speed, Kyle, who has 0 speed, Ford, who has 0 speed, and Orson, who... has 0 speed. After a very Ford 1 HP level, I decide to focus experience into Ephraim and Kyle. Kyle has the most bulk of the 3 calves, making him a good investment target, and then Ephraim is actually contributing. Using the Regan Leaf on calves and armors is the only way to one-hit KO them. Additionally, I have plenty of time while walking through this hallway simulator, moving my unit strategically to bait enemies 1 or 2 at a time. Unfortunately, none of the 3 units who stick around past this map have any appreciable amount of res. As a result, I decide to build supports while Orson, who does have a res stat, uses his face to break the lightning tome of the monk in the throne room. Understandably, this workplace abuse is unacceptable, and rightly makes him want out of the Renee Knights. Anyway, by the end of this map, Kyle has gotten 5 levels, having gained 5 HP, 3 res, and 1 defense in bulk. All of this will be greatly appreciated. Additionally, all of Ephraim, Kyle, and Ford have a sea support triangle built between them. Hopefully, this will help them survive their side of the Castle Renval in Chapter 8. Now we are back with Eirika for a map that I'm very much not looking forward to. Chapter 6, Victims of War. Fog of War map, with jump scare halberd for Seth, with a time limit for how long we can take and still get the Orion's Bolt. Joy. As part of my preparations, I decided to give the Dragon Shield from one of the Chapter 5 villagers to Seth. I'm not against going to the Tower of Volney to grind, meaning that all of my base class units will have the opportunity to level to 20 before promotion, and thus gain defense along the way. And well, at the moment, Seth dying is basically a game over condition, so I figure I should do everything I can to maximise his chances of survival. Here I deploy only Eirika, because she's forced, Seth, of course, Gilliam, he has a lot of defense, and Mulder, for torch and staff weapon experience. My reasoning is that I can have Eirika and Mulder out until the reinforcements arrive from the back, at which point Steph and Gilliam rescue them out of harm's way. Since everyone has 0 speed already, and half of 0 is still 0, the rescue penalty only really means a cut to my unit's skill, which is pretty negligible. This idea does not work out in practice. Due to being unable to one-hit KO the enemies, when the cavalry reinforcements appear, Steph isn't able to reach one of Mulder or Eirika to rescue them. I then make the mistake of first moving Eirika and then moving Mulder to torch, moving Eirika too far away from Gilliam for him to rescue her. The torch usage reveals that they are both in range of cavaliers that are capable of one-rounding them, since they have more than 3 attack speed. While most likely this is GG, I decide not to have Gilliam rescue Mulder, the hope being that if Eirika somehow lives through the enemy phase, Gilliam can rescue her on the following player phase. This turns out to have been the correct choice, as the first cav attacks Mulder due to not facing a counterattack, and then the second one misses one of 2 86s on Eirika. An 86 in 2RN, which FE8 follows, is actually a 96.22% chance of hitting, meaning that there was a 92.6% chance of me being punished for my hubris. Mulder is dead, and that is unfortunate, but the run lives. While all of this is happening, Seth continues to run towards Novala, and is actually able to kill him before the spider reaches the green units. Getting the Orion's Bolt is a pleasant surprise, as at the very least it's an extra 5,000 gold, should I decide that promoting Namie isn't worthwhile. Clearly I've been playing badly, so I decide to call it a day there. I open up a community poll on whether we should go Eirika or Ephraim route, which as of the time of me writing this script is so close that I'm going to have to ask during the stream which route we go. In Chapter 7 of Zero Speed FE8, there are no reinforcements, which means that we can proceed at a leisurely pace. Still, Mage's stats show that they're pretty threatening in this context. Normally, they just hit on the weaker res stat once. However, here, Seth takes around half his HP's worth in damage from a Thunder Mage in a round of combat that he does not retaliate on. It's still pretty relaxed though. Unfortunately, Colm is not able to steal the energy ring. This is for two reasons. Firstly, he hasn't deployed. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, he has 0 speed, which is less than the energy ring mage's 6 speed needed for him to be able to steal it. From here, we head straight into Chapter 8. This proves to be a cramped opener that requires the use of rescue dropping on turn 1 in order to avoid low defense units getting heavily injured by the archer. Once Ephraim and his knights arrive, initially I have them hold back, hoping to block off the cavalry reinforcements that spawn. However, they are, in fact, walk-on reinforcements, and are thus just displaced up by 1 tile each. This means that clever positioning is required to avoid having any one of them get destroyed, which the Regan Leaf does help with. After this, I have them do things up until they run out of healing, which doesn't take very long given how much of that they used in 5x. This is especially the case as progressing through the right side grinds to a halt, as money deals effective damage to me, and I've been paid less than the cost of a cup of coffee to train Naomi. As a result, I decide to train Naomi on the armor knights in the Angelic Robed Room, while Seth chokes the point. This process continues until she breaks her iron bow, at which point I stop because I don't have additional bows in the convoy. The slow walk does, however, continue towards the leftmost treasure room. Colm is able to prove somewhat useful here by lockpicking open a chest containing an Elysian Whip. We have no use for this, as Vanessa has gotten the same number of points of experience as her speed, and Tana will probably do the same. Throughout this extremely lengthy process, I run a poll on which route we should take. Eirika route will be bad because Eirika sucks and I hate Villager Silence, but also means that Seth gets to keep his ace poor partner. Ephraim route will be bad because 0 speed Phantom Ship and Floorspell's Oath will be interesting, and means that even if we get through it, we probably fail on the desert map, because Eirika sucks and will be destroyed by the Pegasi reinforcements. This means that we end up going Ephraim route, so I'm expecting to lose this attempt. I'm not looking forward to Chapter 9 of Fort Rigwald. I also do not look forward to what I decided to do before heading off there, which is to spend over an hour grinding in the Tower of Olney and gathering unethical experience. Early on in this process, we get Gilliam to level 20 and promote him into a general. This is the second time in consecutive Sacred Stones runs where I make him a general, which I do for the increased bulk and also the extra point of speed. In a cursed turn of events, this plus 3 speed from general promotion bonuses means that Gilliam is our fastest unit now, and can only be properly eclipsed by a Ewan who promote into the Dark Magic line. He also has more HP, strength and defense than Seth, with only 1 less res, which, considering the pace that we're going to be doing maps at, may mean that Gilliam is unironically now a better unit than Seth. The main reason why this grind goes on for so long though, is that chat votes to have Naomi level to 20 and then promote. This is further expanded on with people's wallets bidding over Naomi's promotion path, with over £50 being donated. In the end, Sniper wins out, meaning that we now have a 2-range locked unit with 18 strength, 6 defense, 11 res, 6 move, and a grand total of 1 speed. Still, both Chat and I are sick of only grinding, so instead of going and grinding up Altar to an as of yet undecided promotion path, we're going to head straight into Fort Rigwald without further delay. Upon entering Chapter 9, Fort Rigwald, in this 0 speed FE8 Ironman, we have a new unit in the form of Tana, who has 0 speed, which would normally be a blessing because green units are not known for their impeccable decision making. However, here she serves to be annoying by being able to do nothing, and thus just prevents auto-end turn from working as usual. This is what usually happens on this map, and has nothing to do with her having 0 speed. When we open up the door to the inside of the fort, we recruit Amelia. This is great, because even though she, of course, has 0 speed, she brings with her a speed wing. I'm not going to use it on anyone unless it helps me to reach a key threshold for not getting doubled, but if there end up being multiple options, I am very concerned about what chat will express their preference for. At this point, Gilliam deals with most of the reinforcements completely safely, with 1 and 2 shots, taking no damage from the physical enemies and one-shotting the magical ones. I am successfully bribed to use Amelia, so I decide to train her against a priest who I box in, and a cav who I poke to death after having him first break his weapon on Gilliam's face. During this slow process, Colm eventually unlocks all the chests, getting us 2,500 gold and an ocean seal, which we will be using on Ross. Upon reaching the boss, Geb, I remember that he only has one range. I decided to have Arthur train on him until all of his tomes break, and then have Ross kill him. This entire experience takes 132 turns. Naturally, we are now on a bound to return once more to the Tower of Volney, where I am not surprised to see that chat has voted for Amelia to become a knight, with money being paid for her to eventually become a great knight. While I do get her several levels, I am, however, limited by how we don't actually have a knight crest, due to me having used the Chapter 7 knight crest on Gilliam. Still, we might be able to get one from Chapter 10 if the green calves all survive. The operative words here are might and if. I think it's unlikely. Since we're already here and I do direly need somewhat competent units, I decided to get Ross to level 20 and then promote him into a warrior, since I let chat vote on his promotion option. Anyway, this means that he does not gain any speed upon promo, and so will likely have a grand total of 1 speed for the rest of this playthrough. Still, even though Artar is not level 20 for promotion yet, I am incredibly bored of visiting the Tower of Volney, so we will only return here if it's needed to train a unit that people want me to use in the future. In Chapter 10 of this 0 speed FE8 Ironman, we head off to save Dusel, who has 0 speed, but also still has a respectable amount of all of HP, defense and res. He is surrounded by 3 green calves who all need to survive in order for us to get a Knight Crest at the end, which I very much want to promote Amelia. At the very least, as they aren't actually my units, I've left their speed stat unaltered, meaning that they all have more speed than anyone in my army would ever naturally be able to have without the usage of speed wings. This means that they may have some chance of surviving. Speaking of surviving, while it has been a few streams since our last death in the form of Mulder, this abruptly comes to an end when I place Tana poorly and she gets doubled and destroyed by an enemy archer. A bit further into the map, Natasha also dies from a combination of Cormag as a red unit and a boat, which turns out to be able to double people because they have 6 speed and aren't slowed down at all by their 20 weight weapon. This supports my recent decision to just promote Alter at level 17, meaning that we do still have someone capable of healing. Despite Cormac contributing to Natasha's death, and Tana not being able to recruit him due to having 0 speed and also being dead, we recruit him on the next turn by having Ephraim first talk to Dusel, recruiting him, and then having Dusel talk to Cormag. As a result, we now have a 0 speed Wyvern, who I send off to get the secret book, and who will surely survive for a long time. When the reinforcements appear from behind, resident problem solver Gilliam moves back to deal with them, while Amelia, much to my chagrin, handles the enemies to the lower right. All of the green units survive due to my unit scooping them up, so we are able to get the hero crest from the village, and the knight crest for keeping them all alive. Is the knight crest worth 2 of my own units dying? Honestly? Probably. We're definitely not getting to recruit Renak, so there are a finite number of promotion items that we can use, and we need semi-competent units. This is not least because now it's time for everyone's favourite map, Phantom Ship. I decided to low deploy, bringing along only Seth, Gilliam, Dusel and Amelia as bulky units, Arta to gain some staff weapon experience, and Vanessa and Cormag to try and block off the boss from spawning. If you're wondering why both Vanessa and Cormag are here to block off the appearance of one enemy, it's because I'm too lazy to check the exact tile where the boss shows up on FE Builder, and so decided to bring them both for security. Yes, I do come to regret this decision pretty soon. Also yes, this map is a bloodbath. The first few turns are pretty calm. Upon getting Amelia her next level, I promote her into a Great Knight, as has been paid for. Predictably, the map becomes far less calm once the boss wave arrives, though at least I have successfully prevented the boss from spawning. On the enemy phase, Vanessa is killed, as is Larachelle. She does have 0 speed, as we can see from the combat screen, but frankly, I don't even bother to check her speed when she arrives on the map, because her death is just that much of a given. So far, all of this is within my expectations. What is not within my expectations is the death of Seth, who ends up getting killed due to exact damage from everyone from within the fog teaming up on him. Not helped by a mogul, who rolled up on speed, and was therefore able to double him. This is a severe loss, and prompts around a minute's worth of deranged laughter while I try and recompose myself. I am not successful in doing so, and thus mess up my rescue chaining and positioning, leading to the death of Cormag, and thus all of our flyers, since Cyrene is Omega dead. Well, Now we have 10,000 gold's worth of illusion whips to sell. So there's that. After all of that blood spilled, we finally stabilise and no one else dies. To my surprise, Dozler surviving to the end means that he gets recruited to the end of the map despite Larshal being dead, and he naturally has 0 speed, which is not that far off his actual speed in vanilla. Finishing Phantom Ship brings us straight to Chapter 12, landing at Tyzel. While far less threatening than Phantom Ship, I once again low deploy due to the monster reinforcements that will arrive shortly. After dealing with them, my units, Reed, mostly just Gilliam, slowly move towards recruiting Ewan, who has 0 speed. While everyone else catches up, I train him up to Pupil 10, with the intention of turning him into a summoner, because God knows that I need the lightning rod effect of summons plural on my side. I then bait in Marissa with an unequipped Gilliam and recruit her with Ewan. She, of course, has 0 speed, and like Joshua, suffers severely in this context, since now she has approximately 0 good stats. Sadly for me, it seems like we may have to return to the tower to train Marissa. This is because someone wants me to use her, and I very much don't think she's usable without taking advantage of the tower. There's a very strong chance that she remains not exactly usable even after the tower, but shh. And then killing the boss is completely free, meaning that we finally have another map without unit deaths. We first end stream with the death count having kept tupled, and my number of actually tanky units having decreased from 4 to 3. Seth, I miss you already! In Chapter 13 of this 0 speed FE8 Iron Man, I promote Ewan to Shaman, with the eventual hopes of promoting him into a summoner, as I think that they will be very important meat shields during this 0 speed run. Unfortunately, I'm not able to continue training him towards this goal, as Floorspell's Oath has many Pegasi reinforcements, and I have little faith in my ability to keep several non-tanky units alive. Fortunately at least, Selena hasn't rolled up on speed, and thus is not able to double many of my units with bolting. Still, I low deploy, bringing along only the tanky units, Ephraim and Altar. At the start of the map, we get Garrick, who has 0 speed, and Tethys, who has 0 speed. Garrick comes along with his own hero crest, and is probably the best bet that we have at getting a tanky hero crest user, so we will probably be using and promoting him at some point. Tethys having 0 speed doesn't really matter, since she was ideally never going to see any combat anyway. This does still mean 2 more bodies to keep alive, so I have them run towards the party ASAP, while Ross, Gilliam, Amelia and Dusel take formation to block off the enemies. This process lasts until all the reinforcements stop, and then we slowly move forward and run Selena out of bolting. Amusingly, our general remains the best choice for this endeavour. After this, we can advance in earnest, and I get kills on Garrick wherever possible. Following chat encouragement, I decide to have Ephraim kill Selena for the meme at an 82 displayed hit rate, which is a 93.70% chance in true hit. AKA, I run a 6% chance of having to do this entire run over from the beginning. Luckily, I do not get punished and the run survives. To bring me to Chapter 14, Father and Son. This is a map where normally we would be able to recruit Renak if we hurried, but there's absolutely no way that he's joining, to the point where I don't even check to confirm that he does in fact have 0 speed. The initial opener is filled with aggressive enemies and reinforcements, and means that we end up choke pointing on both sides until the pre-door reinforcements stop, though this does at least mean that we're able to get a bit of Ewan training in. I then decide to try and run out the Berserk staves and then misposition Altar, our sole restore user, meaning that Amelia gets berserked and he is silenced and therefore unable to restore her. This leads to a very tragic moment where Naomi almost gets killed by Amelia, only avoiding this as she dodges an 86, as it has been such a long time since I have failed the Berserk's restore check, I have forgotten that Berserk's blue units can still move through allied units. Still, I am not punished for my misplay and everyone is still alive. Eventually, I do get to actually open up the doors, then I get swarmed by the post-door reinforcements, who are, unfortunately, magical. Once again, our resident mage killer general steps in and deals with them, while everyone else maintains a healthy distance. After this, I safely stall out the remaining Berserk usages before opening the door to the guard's chamber, dealing with the reinforcements there, and discovering, much to my delight, that Gilliam can Oko the Berserk Druid with perfect accuracy with a silver axe. The guard is fine, mostly because I face him like a coward. by breaking his spear on Gilliam's face and then killing him in complete safety. Ephraim seizes, and we have a new unit in Null, who has the great honour of joining us with zeros in 2 stats. Like Ewan, he'll be promoting into a summoner in due course. Speaking of due course, it is now time for the map that I've been dreading for the past several streams, as soon as the vote decided that we were going Ephraim route. Chapter 15, Scorched Sands. Especially with all of my flyers being dead, I have very little faith in my ability to keep Eirika, and therefore the run, alive. As a result, I asked chat if we could consider this a checkpoint, to which they vote yes. Upon actually entering Chapter 15, we are joined by Eirika, Saleh and Inez off in the top right, who all have 0 speed. Eirika has apparently gotten 6 strength levels in her 9 auto levels, which is wild. Still, this will not save her from getting mauled by the Pegasus Knight reinforcements. What will save her though, is Saleh's desert movement, meaning that he is able to rescue her and then run to the main party. Speaking of the main party, for the most part, they huddle up by the body ring hidden item in advance of the reinforcements that will eventually arrive from the bottom left. I say for the most part, as Gilliam, as per usual, just does his own thing. There are a couple of close calls. One where Naomi saves herself by getting a 14% crit on an enemy archer, and another where Noel barely avoids being doubled. He does so only because the promotion into summoner gives him +3 speed. And then there is an actual death for Inez, who did, in fairness, deserve it after missing a 94 in 2RN, actually a 99.34% chance in true hit. Noel's summons come in immediately handy as decoys, including such roles as breaking Kalek's Tomahawk and the top right Berserker's Hand Axe. This is, however, a very slow process, so after killing Kalek and getting the Hop on Guard off him so that Gilliam can engage the Devil Axe Berserker by Volta safely, Ewan himself promotes and uses his own summons to break Volta's spear. Notably, after having promoted into summoner, Ewan now has 4 speed, making him the fastest unit in our army in terms of natural speed. Exciting! Anyway, after collecting all of the treasure, we finally kill him and end the map. This entire process takes over an hour, and I'm not sure how many turns, but it was actually far less bad than I was expecting it to be, considering that my flyers are all dead. So, faith restored in the run? In Chapter 16, ruled by madness of this 0 speed FE8 Ironman, we are joined by Myrrh, who has 0 speed. However, she soon no longer has a 0 speed growth, as I decided to give her the Metis tome. With any luck, this means that we might actually see a speed level. The early parts of the map itself involve slowly advancing while leveling Myrrh where convenient. Additionally, I am very confused about why one of the Eclipse Druids isn't using Eclipse. Eventually, with the aid of the Phantom Flow, we do get over to them and start killing them, and we're even able to get the Purge tome, which is a great boon as I suspect that Arta's Slayer Purge will be helpful in the late game. The boss of this map is obviously Awesome, who does have more than 0 speed, betraying the fact that he is not, in fact, one of the speedless. He is holding onto a rune sword, Hector's iconic weapon from Fire Emblem Engage, meaning that we can have pure-watered Gilliam face him down. This duel goes on for less time than expected, as while I attack him on player phase, on the enemy phase he decides to switch to the Silver Lance for some reason, giving Gilliam weapon triangle advantage and thus better hit rates. That brings us to another Gilliam level, and he has capped both his strength and defense. In my excitement over this, despite saying that I'm going to get the talisman in the top chest of the map, I very much do not get it. This is sad as, with a capped defense unit, now all that we really need is some res, despite me very much talking down res in a recent video essay. Anyway, moving on from that moment, Ephraim and Eirika at last get to promote and get their Sacred Twin weapons. Hilariously, Ephraim is faster than Eirika since his promotion gives +2 speed, whereas Eirika's only gives +1. Still, even though Eirika is far less bulky than he is, I could do worse than a 7 move unit that I didn't train at all, with 12 strength and a PRF that has 37 might against monsters. Next up is Chapter 17, River of Regrets. Despite looking like a Seas map, it's actually a kill boss map against Leon, who is wildly slow when factoring in the weight of his tomes, to the point where he cannot double most of my units even with the lighter Nosferatu. With the stronger Fenrir, he has 39 magic attack, which turns out to be exactly the amount of res that Myrrh has after drinking a pure water. I also want to finish this map quickly. The Wyverns promise to be trouble if I let them get too close to both my own units and also the green units. Cyrene, who has 0 speed, I cannot recruit on map, since all of Vanessa, Tana and Inez are dead, but will be recruited if she survives to the end of the map. This is something that I very much want to do, since all of my flyers are dead, so she will be able to contribute not only to Chapter 18 as she usually does, but also to Darkling Woods. Additionally, being able to get the rescue staff would be great. As a result, the initial plan is to warp Myrrh to him before I remember about the Lunar Druids, who completely wreck her. This means that I have to adjust my plan slightly to also include Gilliam getting warped to help to get rid of them. Then I position Myrrh in front of Leon and have her down her pure water. Across the enemy phase, Myrrh doesn't get a 22% crit on Leon, so the Wyverns are able to actually reach my other units, with Noel getting doubled and killed. Which is unfortunate. Rip one of our 2 summoners. But I guess that you can only avoid your execution date getting moved up for so long. On her 3rd attack, Myrrh is able to cleanly kill Leon, and actually gets a speed level in the process. But yeah, that brings an end to the map with all the Riverfolk and Cyrene alive, meaning that we now actually have a flyer and the rescue staff. Both of these are nice boons, and at the very least, we still have 1 summoner left in Ewan. While the number will now obviously decrease due to the loss of Noel, I decided to keep track of the number of dead phantoms. 75 died just in Chapter 15, and 15 died across Chapters 16 and 17, leading to a current total of 90 dead phantoms. In Chapter 18, 2 Faces of Evil of this 0 speed FE8 Iron Man, we come face to face, 2 faces, with Gorgons and many Gorgon eggs. This includes yet another Siege Tome moment in the form of Shadow Shot, which thankfully the Gorgons are weighed down by to the point where they have less than 4 attack speed, meaning that they just do what they do in normal FE8 gameplay, hit hard on res once. I'm not sure how much this actually mattered though, given that I just use Ewan's Phantoms as bait for Shadow Shot. During this process, my units try and eliminate as many eggs as they can. I warp Gilliam down to the bottom right so they can clear out that corner, and we have somewhere safe to retreat our units to if need be. Myrrh I initially planned to have deal with the eggs in the top right corner, until she gets stoned and is unable to move for several turns. I'm initially very concerned about this, as being stoned means that enemies are always guaranteed to hit you and have a 30% flat chance of critting you. However, it turns out that with Dragonstone bonuses, she straight up takes 0 damage from everything, so it's completely fine to leave her on her own for several turns. While she stalls, I learn that poison overrides stone, which is funny. Eventually, our inability to meaningfully push forward in a timely fashion means that the remaining eggs all start hatching en masse as ambush spawns. As Myrrh continues to keep most of the enemies in top right occupied, my other units slowly pull and kill individual enemies patiently, which includes the deaths of many phantoms. Myrrh is extracted after many turns of stalling, and 19 phantoms die during the course of this map, bringing us to 109 dead phantoms in total. Where no phantoms are lost is in Chapter 19, Last Hope, a fog of war map that ends either after surviving for a set number of turns or by defeating the boss. Spoilers, we're not defeating Reeve. During battle preps, Chat and I quickly identified that the top left room is the safest place to hole up, not least because there are already 4 deployment slots there. As a result, I decided to low deploy, bringing along only Gilliam and Myrrh as potential tanks, and then Altar and Saleh as staffers, all stationed in the top left room. Ephraim cannot start there, but that's just as well, as someone has to scoop up the green Pontifex mantle anyway, and then on turn 2 is rescued inside of the top left room, with an unequipped Gilliam blocking the entrance. It turns out that we have a chest key in the convoy, so I decide to warp Myrrh over with it to obtain the speed wing from the middle chest, and then rescue her back. This means that we now have 2 speed wings, and therefore 2 installments of 2 speed to give to any one unit. So probably Gilliam, who may be able to not get doubled by some things with Garm equipped. What a novelty. With 12 speed, he may even be able to double some of the enemies on the next map. Amazing! Unsurprisingly, the green units all die. Hilariously, multiple of the green armors have 0 speed, leading to people in chat asking if I have set them to have 0 speed as well, which I have not. Even the one who rolled 1 speed still dies in 1 round of combat. Ah, green units. Please change, I beg of you. We stall out the remaining turns, with Saleh spamming the torch staff so we can get him A stays for a secondary warp user just in case I want one. I also bust out the Purge Tome to get the Brave Lance off of an enemy general.
and decide against getting the Brave Bow from Sniper. As a result of killing a grand total of one enemy during this map, by the end of the 13 turns we have to survive, there is an astronomical number of enemies clogging up all the visible squares outside of the room. It's quite a sight, but clearly the remnants are all gamers and are definitely allergic to sunlight, leaving us be. At any rate, now I need to think about and plan out how I'm going to approach chapter 20 and the finale, because I really don't want to have to fight all 157 enemies on the next map. In the end, the way that I decided to approach chapter 20, Darkling Woods, is by moving everyone around to around the 2 o'clock position of the map, snipe Myrrh with a purge, have someone else finish him, and lastly warp Ephraim over to Seas. Since there are multiple immediately aggressive enemies, including some gargoyle flyers, I make use of our massive 18 available deployment slots bringing along sacrifices, leading to the death of Colm, who a gargoyle prefers to attack over a phantom. Additionally, in the process of clearing other aggressive enemies, Myrrh gets a second speed level. This doesn't matter at all, but is still very hype. Alter hits his purge, putting a huge dent in Myrrh, and then, for the meme, I decide to warp over Gilliam to finish him off with Gorm. Fortunately, Gilliam does hit his 97, and Ephraim seizes to end the map, leaving Reeve in peace. Due to Eirika being forced and there only being 12 deployment slots in the finale, which is a map lifted from Fire Emblem Engage, I end up having to bench Garrick. Then I choose to bench Dusel and bring along unpromoted Kyle so that we can promote him and have him do nothing, once again for the meme, due to chat encouragement. In the process of setting up so that we could hopefully warp skip this map, I check Leon's speed and realise that despite apparently having 16 speed, Naglfar's 18 weight means that he only has 5 attack speed. That means that with Garm equipped and a speed wing, Gilliam is able to double him, which is hilarious. While killing the initially aggressive enemies, I have a Phantom accidentally kill the enemy who has a droppable chest key. As a result, chat wants me to get the Angelic Robe chest with it, which I oblige with, and which the Phantom cannot use or trade off to anyone else. Tragic, especially when it dies with a stat booster on its person. My memeing around with both Kyle and the Phantom belies the fact that I have not, in fact, done all of my calculations. This results in 2 things. Firstly, it leads to a panicked moment where I realise that the longbow does pitiful damage to the Necro Dragon, and therefore it is, in fact, an enemy that I cannot beat freely. Hilariously, when I have everyone else retreat and leave only a Phantom and Namie in its range, the Dragon prefers to go for Namie over the Phantom, leading to a very unnecessary, but funny, death. Secondly, my failure to calculate the combined damage that Myrrh and Gilliam do to Leon leads to me warping Myrrh, who does 21 damage to his 75 HP, without checking whether Gilliam can finish him off, which he cannot, dealing 50 damage to his remaining 54. This results in a confused shuffle where she gets stoned multiple times while we have to deal with the Archmogul reinforcements from the left, before I use the final charge of the rescue staff to get her out of danger. In the end, everything is fine though, with this glorious doubling battle forecast with Gilliam against Leon. So, the only enemy that we doubled the whole game was the boss of the first part of the finale. Beautiful. That's really it, because, well, the Demon King is completely free, just like in vanilla. He isn't even able to one-round Myrrh or Gilliam due to their high defense. The combination of Slayer Purge, a Dragonstone hit, and then 2 Gorm hits with 74 accuracy brings an end to the run with yet more Gilliam gaming. So, can you beat FE8 with 0 speed and 0 speed growth? Answer: yes. Yes you can. There were 123 deaths, 112 phantom deaths, and 11 playable character deaths, including Seth. The process took a total of 812 turns, not including the time spent in the Tower of Volney, and I learn at this point that we spent 64 turns in the desert and 27 turns with the Gorgon eggs, which are both less time than I was expecting, honestly. Some of the turn counts even turned out to look like normal turn counts, like the 5 turns spent by the Piss River, and then the 5 turns in Darkling Woods, which is reasonable for a standard flyer skip. Having watched a good chunk of Exalblem's 0 strength run, I do think that this run was harder. Speed really is important, not only for offensive performance in terms of doubling, but also for defensive purposes in the form of not getting doubled. Not having it led to my units being much frailer generally, unless they actually had high raw defensive stats like Gilliam and later Myrrh grew to have. Additionally, unlike attack supports or effective weaponry for augmenting damage, there isn't a similar equivalent for augmenting speed. In terms of how this alteration affected unit performance, here is the tier list that I made at the end of the final stream based on this specific run. The value of tanks, especially defense tanks with high HP, increased by a lot, such as Gilliam or Dusel. It helps that they also happen to have not awful res, which is important in this context where mages double everyone. To a lesser extent, this was also true of purely HP tanks such as Garcia and Ross, though my trained Ross was blessed in both defense and res, which did help a lot, though I would say their general stocks were not fantastic. Seth became completely invaluable for the early game, though as was shown when he died on Phantom Ship, other units can eventually take over the tanking role. And then the summoners got much better. I am not huge on summoners in vanilla optimized Sacred Stones play, but both Ewan and Noel, when the latter was alive, took a huge amount of pressure off my already overstretched units. The existence of the Phantoms also meant that I was able to get the Purge Tome in Chapter 16, which was really valuable with the Bishop Slayer skill for managing a ton of dicey situations. Conversely, anyone weak, and especially frail, became much more of a liability. For some units, it wasn't that much of a concern, like with our Dancer, Tethys, the unpromoted flyers if I had positioned them properly, or later Cyrene. However, it was a huge issue for anyone who doesn't have non-combat utility, like any of the potential Shamshir users. Joshua is a decent enough unit in vanilla because he has exceptional one-range combat. Here, he does not, and also has to be protected by units that are already struggling more individually defensively, so it's just a losing proposition. The one possible exception to this on Ephraim route is Saleh, who I have to place highly simply for his desert movement being so important for Eirika's survival in Chapter 15. It was a very strange run, but I enjoyed the playthrough a lot. If you want to play this abomination for some reason, you can download a link to it in the video description or in the community Discord. Additionally, I have an idea for how I can use this run as a case study in next week's video essay, which is planned to be a more comprehensive analysis of speed with actual examples. I am very excited for it, so I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching, especially if you join the streams or watch the recap videos that I made following each one. It was a very different process of working on a compilation video, so I can see the improvements, and also understand why each of Exalbum's short recaps are so short generally. So if you like this type and style of content, please do let me know, whether it's through liking or commenting on the video, or subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. I'm not just saying that as a stock line. I am not a mind reader. If I don't know people are actively interested in a specific style of content, I will probably stop making it. Additionally, telling me what you're interested in seeing is the best way to influence future projects I work on for the channel. So I guess that's an open invitation for both feedback on this run and suggestions for future runs. Besides doing so in the comment section, you can also tell me your thoughts in the community Discord, which you can find the link to in the description below. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I hope to see you again next time. Until then, have a good one.